I was informed that the Magna Carta is not real. Now, I don't know who actually said that in my comment section, but somebody did say it. The Magna Carta does not exist and it is not real. So me and my son, we did a little research. Obviously, I'm not that well versed in the Magna Carta. I know it exists, I know what it is, and I know why it existed. King John was not one of England's greatest kings. Shock horror. So, in 1215, during King John's reign, now you see this concept that history and politics don't exist in the same space. I was also informed about that. Someone told me that history and politics do not exist in the same space, and that I was uneducated. Okay, now honestly, I'm not all that caught up on everything, and I do get things all muddled up because my head is a bit kind of We all know this. Anybody and everybody who knows me, like, has followed me on here for like since I started, knows full mile. My head's a bit kind of whatever. In all honesty, it really is. But I'm not uneducated. My memory, however, is a bit kind of hit and miss. Do understand my history though. And I do understand that the Magna Carta is a real document. And that politics and history very much do go hand in hand. Because, you see, we learn a lot through history. History teaches us a hell of a lot. And it's through history that we learn and we grow. A bit like the Germans. If anybody's been listening to any of the Germans over the last few weeks, they've had a lot to say about anything and everything that's been happening over in America. Yeah, you'd be amazed at the kind of things they've had to say that's been happening over in America lately. And not all of it good. And most of it sort of surrounding, their past, because they've lived a history that wasn't that great. They've been under a ruler that suppressed them, who took away their education, who burned books, banned education, started taking away their freedoms, and inevitably started a world war. I wonder who that was. Can anyone remember his name? I don't know. Yeah. And now America's kind of going the same way. Germany can see where they're heading, and they've been trying to warn. At the very beginning, when Trump first started, they tried to warn America because they've been there, they've seen it, they've done it, they lived it, and they learnt from it. History and politics very much do go hand in hand, because we live our lives, we learn from our past mistakes, both physically, emotionally, mentally, politically, country to country. You'll see it through history. So yes, they do. And as for the Magna Carta, it very much is a real thing. Now, understand this. The Magna Carta was something that was put into place by the barons of the time in 1215. Now, at the time, it was not actually so much for the little people. It was because at the time, King John really, really wanted to rule the country. Prince John at the time, his brother died, because he hated our land. He was never here. He was off fighting his crusades and doing his thing. And eventually when he died, he took over. Was not very popular amongst the people. And there were uprisings and there was dissatisfaction and there were lots and lots of issues going on. There was a lot of political unrest as well. And so the barons and the lords and the noblemen, they all got together and they brought up this document, which was done by one of the popes. And they forced him to sign it, put his seal on it. And he was forced. It was a forced signing. He had to sign it. He didn't have a choice. They weren't given one. And it was to separate the power, to spread it out, so that he did not have absolute control over the country, so that the barons and the lords and everything else could actually have some say in how the country was ran, over some of the laws of the land. That is what it was there for. Now, it was this concept, the Magna Carta, it is the very foundation of Parliament. Now, when King John died, the Magna Carta, it was annulled. The very first version of it was annulled, and then it was rewritten by the next king, and then it was rewritten again and again. With every new monarch, a new version was written over and over again. It was revised and written and revised and written over and over and over again, until we get to 1297. In 1297, Edward I actually made you have Edward I's version. In 1297, he made it statutory law, which became the very foundation of our Parliament. It became the building block that stabilised our country and our laws. And it still stands today in a weird kind of form. And it does. The weird thing is, it doesn't just stand here. After Edward I died, and with every other king and queen that took over, it was renewed. Every single new monarch renewed the document, until we get to King James and his son Charles I. Now, we all know what happened with Charles I at Parliament, because they actually tried to suppress the Magna Carta. They actually tried to suppress it. Now, Magna Carta has another name. Magna Carta is its Latin name for Great Charter. Great Charter. So we also call it the Charter. Okay, the Charter. Okay, now I spelt it wrong. I know I did. I spell a lot of things wrong, because I do. But they tried to suppress the Magna Carta and get rid of it. And in doing so, he lost his head. And we don't allow stuff like that. We got rid of him. He lost his head. Charles I lost his head, and we had a full parliamentary rule. We got rid of the monarchy, and we had just one parliament. We just had the parliament. We thought the parliament knew what they were doing. They would speak for the people. They would be there for us. They would, yeah, it didn't work out. We all know that. Puritans took over. Who could have foreseen that happening? The Parliament was in full control. We got rid of the monarchy, thinking it would be the best thing we'd ever do. If the monarchy was going to suppress the Magna Carta, let's get rid of it all. I mean, there was a lot of other things going on as well at that time as well, because, Charles I was not that great. But it didn't help. There was a lot of other things going on as well, but suppressing the Magna Carta did not help. We got rid of him, and we had full parliamentary rule. And I've said it before, absolute power, it corrupts. Absolutely. And we end up with a single power. Now, when Parliament took over, it was a literal, we had one rule. That was it. They were on their own and they were ruling. We did not like it. We as England found that we cannot have a monarchical rule, and we cannot have a pure parliamentary rule, because no matter which way we took it, it went to extremes. The monarchy loved the power and were horrible, hideous, and hard and in charge. They're by ordinance of God, and there was nobody that could touch them if they were on their own. Parliament let the power just go to their heads, and they just took over. So we did what was best for us, and we brought back the monarchy. Long live Charles II. We all know this one. But this concept of having an equaliser that protects everybody. Now, the Magna Carta does just that. There was a hell of a lot that goes into the Magna Carta. Now, it was mainly for all the nobles of the land, but it works for the people because the nobles understood that if you keep the people on side, it helps them. They understood that more than anybody. You see, if we suffered too much, now, we still suffered, but if we suffered too much, it affected them. If we didn't get what we needed, they didn't get money. They lost everything. They needed the little people, the nobles, the barons, the lords. They needed the normal people, the poor people, because they needed us to tend their land. Without us, they were nobody. So they did what was in the interest of them and to make sure we could continue working. It wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the best, especially back then, because, whatever, but they made sure that we had what we needed. It was a very basic, very bare minimum, but it was what we needed so that they could keep getting what they wanted. And as the centuries have gotten on, it's gotten better. We all know this too. But there were clauses in the Magna Carta. I mean, I'm not going to, try and make this sound better than it was back in like the 1700s, 1800s, 1600s. I'm not going to say if you were one of the little people you had the greatest life, because you didn't. The lords, the nobles, they were living it up while we, the little people, were still like doing hard grafting and having a hard life. But they made sure that we had everything, the bare minimum, which is something we never had under absolute rule. When they had a buffer with a monarchy and a parliament working together, we had a buffer. And that's exactly what it is. It is a buffer between the two. So they have to work together to make sure the country runs smoothly. No one person can say, you are going to do this and there's nothing you can say about it. You can't stop me. La, 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 la. I'm better than anybody. I'm in power. I've got control. There is none of that. It's we work together to make this country great. And even if the little people have to suffer a little bit because, we're better than you because this is like the 1600s, they don't care. As the centuries have gone on and the world has changed and times have changed and people have changed, the Magna Carta changed with it. And it did change. And it became a little bit absolute. Not absolute. There's a word and I can't find it. I'll find it later. But it wasn't needed so much anymore because we'd found ourselves in a position where everybody was stable. The country was in a good place. But there were 3 parts of Magna Carta here in England that they never got rid of from 1297. And they are clauses that absolutely were necessary all the way through history, right up to now. And they are still relevant now. So the Magna Carta, although a very old document, and going all the way back to the 1297 and in 1215, so there are clauses on the 1297 document that actually date back to 1215, the original document. Now, and they still stand today in 2025. So the Magna Carta is still relevant, even today. You can call it the Great Charter if you want, or the Charter if you so wish, instead of the Magna Carta if you want to do it that way and say it's not the Magna Carta, it's just the Charter. I don't mind, but it still stands today. And there is something very interesting that I found out when having a quick look. The American justice system in 1974 was built on Clause 45 of the Magna Carta, which I found really rather interesting. Clause 45 states that the Crown has to, well, actually it's to do with require the King to appoint knowledgeable officials to the right roles. And in California, in 1974, Clause 45 was used to establish your common laws in America, in California specifically. So for anyone in my comments to say the Magna Carta isn't real, in America, in California, in 1974, Clause 45 that requires the King to appoint knowledgeable officials to their right roles in the Court of Justice, which is the whole thing, right, was used to establish your common laws. So if it's not real, how could it be used in 1974 in California to establish common laws? That's interesting, that is. Found that rather interesting. Yeah. Did find that rather interesting. But there are other clauses in the Charter, that we still use to this day, and that is Clause 39 and Clause 40 as well, that we still also use. And they are specifically to do with the justice system, freedom of the people, and due diligence. And then we also have the one where, liberty of the English Church, which is not surprising considering who we are and where we are. But the reality is, it is the absolute foundation of our Parliament. It is the foundation of our justice system. It's the reason why we are the way we are today. And not only is it the establishment of your common laws in California in 1974, in New Zealand, South Australia, West Australia, Northern Territories and Tasmania, apart from Chapter 26, the rest of the Magna Carta is still completely in force, except for Chapter 76. The entirety of the Magna Carta is still in force, except for Chapter 26 in New Zealand, Southern Australia, Western Australia, the Northern Territories, and Tasmania. And somebody tells me it's not real and it doesn't exist. In Chapter 26, however, all on its own, the whole of Chapter 26 is in force in Australia's capital city, New South Wales, Victoria. Just Chapter 26 is in force in those three places. So if it's not real, how can that happen? Now, as for the clauses that are still actually active, in force and relevant today, in 2025, there are three. And I wrote them down as they stand. Now they are clauses 29, 39, and 40. The first clause is the freedom of the church. Now I'm going to read it as it actually is written inside of the Magna Carta. So the freedom of the church. First, we have granted to God, and by this our present charter have confirmed for us and our heirs forever, that the Church of England shall be free, and shall have her whole rights and her liberties inviolable. We have granted also and given to all freemen of our realm, for us and our heirs forever, these liberties underwritten, and to have and to hold to them and their heirs of us forever, of us, our heirs forever. Right? To the City of London is the next one. So I think this is clause 39. Right, so the City of London shall have all the old liberties and customs which it hath been used to have. Moreover, we will and grant that all other cities, boroughs, towns, and the barons of the 5 ports, and all the other ports shall have all their liberties and free customs. That one's a bit of a weird one. And clause 40, this is for freemen. This is about being able to have your liberties. And it goes, no freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or be disseised of his freehold or liberties or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled or any otherwise destroyed, nor will we not pass upon him, nor condemn him, nor be unlawful judge, nor by unlawful judgment of his peers, or by law of the land. We shall sell no man. We will not deny or defer to any man either justice or right. Now, those 3 still hold tongue today. They are still in force. We still hold them. The Magna Carta still stands in this country. It's still real. It's still prominent. Can't speak today. And regardless of the fact that it's not this huge, great big document, it is the foundation of Parliament, and without it, the people of England would not have a voice. It is necessary, or it was necessary, and it still is necessary today.